Most people believe they are behind. Behind in income, behind in investing, behind in life. They look around and see others accelerating, buying earlier, owning sooner, scaling quietly. And the conclusion feels simple. I need to work harder. But catching up is not a motivation problem. It is a structural problem. Because the system most people operate inside is linear. You trade time for money. You get paid once. You repeat. Every week resets. Every paycheck resets. Every month begins at zero again. You can increase your hourly rate. You can increase your workload. You can increase your stress tolerance. But the equation remains the same. Time to money to reset. Meanwhile, the environment around you does not move in straight lines. Assets compound. Housing appreciates. Equities scale. Businesses expand without clocking hours. Costs curve upward. Returns curve upward. Capital multiplies. You are operating in a straight line inside a curved world. That mismatch is the gap. This is why effort often feels unconverted. You are not failing, you are misaligned. When your income is linear and your expenses are exponential, working harder does not close the distance. It stabilizes survival. Most people become highly skilled at earning. Very few become skilled at owning. Those are not the same thing. Earning depends on your presence. Owning depends on structure. Earning stops when you stop. Owning continues when you step away. And the system quietly incentivizes earning because linear workers are predictable. They show up, they produce, they repeat. Ownership shifts leverage. Ownership shifts bargaining power. Ownership reduces dependence. So most people remain in motion. They wake up early. They optimize productivity. They chase raises. They feel movement. But movement is not escape. The person who owns assets is not running faster than you. They are on a different curve. Their base grows even if their effort remains constant. Your base resets unless your effort increases. Over time, that difference becomes invisible at first, then irreversible. Year 1 looks similar. Year 5 diverges. Year 10 becomes unbridgeable. This is why most people will never catch up. Not because they are lazy, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack ambition, but because they are compounding effort instead of compounding capital. And those two paths do not scale the same. If you do not own something that grows without you, your ceiling is tied to your hours. And hours do not multiply. They deplete. The gap is not speed, it is structure. And structure always wins over effort. The most dangerous illusion in modern economies is the belief that income equals progress. Income feels like advancement. You negotiate a raise, you switch companies, you add credentials, you increase your hourly value. The number rises, and psychologically that feels like movement. But income is not position, it is flow. Flow passes through you. Position stays with you. When your financial life depends entirely on income, you are not building weight, you are maintaining circulation. Circulation can look impressive, high salary, bonuses, performance incentives. But if nothing underneath compounds, nothing accumulates. The system understands this distinction clearly because labor is rented, ownership is retained. A salary keeps you consistent, debt keeps you scheduled, subscriptions keep you automated, all predictable. Predictability benefits institutions. Unpredictability benefits owners. Most people optimize for higher income. Few optimize for ownership growth. Those are different objectives. Income growth has a ceiling. Ownership growth expands with time. Even high earners are bounded. There are only so many hours, only so much energy, only so much tolerance for stress. You can increase efficiency. You cannot remove the limit of time. Ownership does not share that ceiling. An asset can appreciate without additional labor. Equity can scale beyond your hours. A business can produce beyond your physical presence. This is where divergence begins. If your survival depends on continuous labor, your risk tolerance remains constrained. Low risk tolerance limits asset acquisition. Limited asset acquisition prevents compounding. And without compounding, you remain dependent on resets. Work to survive. Survive to work. Capital operates differently. Acquire, hold, leverage, repeat. Capital uses time as an ally. Labor trades time as a cost. Here is the asymmetry most people miss. Your wage is an expense to someone. Their asset is income to them. When you work, you reinforce their structure. When they own, they reinforce their future. You can be exceptional inside someone else's model and still never cross into leverage. Excellence in labor is not the same as scale. Leverage means your output exceeds your direct input. Leverage means effort multiplies. Leverage means a single decision produces recurring return. Most people build capacity. Capacity increases strength. Leverage increases freedom. The system rewards capacity, degrees, promotions, expanded responsibilities. These increase your value inside the structure. They do not change the structure itself. And unchanged structure produces predictable outcomes. If your base model is linear, you are competing against something that compounds, while you improve something that resets. Expenses clear accounts. Inflation erodes purchasing power. Taxes extract more aggressively from labor than capital. The reset is quiet but constant. So the belief persists. I just need a little more. More salary, more optimization, more productivity. But if the base remains linear, more delays divergence. It does not eliminate it. To close distance in a compounding environment, you must own something that compounds. Otherwise, you are trying to outrun math, and math does not slow down. Most people will never catch up, not because they lack effort, but because they never transition from pure participant to partial owner. Even partial ownership shifts trajectory. Without it, you remain in circulation, and circulation, no matter how fast, is not accumulation. If this feels familiar, if you've felt this pressure but never had words for it, this channel isn't here to motivate you. It's here to help you see clearly. If that resonates, like the video, subscribe. More clarity is coming. There is another layer most people never examine: incentives. Every system produces the behavior it rewards, and modern economic systems reward stability in labor more than mobility in ownership. From early education, the path is framed clearly: study, qualify, apply, earn. The goal is placement, not leverage. You are trained to become employable, rarely trained to become scalable. Employability makes you valuable to structures. Scalability makes structures valuable to you. That difference is subtle early on, but over time it compounds. Employability increases your bargaining power slightly. Scalability increases your independence structurally. One improves terms, the other changes the game. The average person measures progress through income milestones: first salary, first promotion, six figures. These are linear upgrades. They improve comfort. They do not alter dependency. Dependency is not dramatic. It feels normal. You depend on your employer, on continued market demand, on your health, on your availability. If any one of those fails, your income pauses. Ownership reduces that fragility. When you own productive assets, income is partially detached from your immediate presence. Not fully, but partially is enough to change trajectory. Here's where incentives quietly shape outcomes. Labor income is taxed at the point of effort. Capital income is often taxed at the point of gain. Timing matters. Deferral matters. Structure matters. The system encourages you to earn. It quietly favors those who own. This is not conspiracy. It is design. Because capital fuels growth. Labor fuels operation. Growth compounds. Operation sustains. If you remain in operation, you remain essential but replaceable. If you accumulate capital, you become optional but influential. Optionality is power. Most people optimize for security. Security inside employment, predictable pay cycles, predictable promotions, predictable career ladders. Security feels safe, but security without ownership is stability without acceleration. Acceleration is what creates separation over time. A small asset base growing at modest rates outpaces even strong income growth over decades. That is not motivational. It is mathematical. And math does not adjust for fairness. It compounds what is placed into it. Nothing more, nothing less. This is why the gap feels invisible early on. In the first few years, income growth and asset growth appear similar. By year 10, they are not. The person reinvesting surplus into assets begins to experience non-linear effects. Returns produce returns. Appreciation builds on appreciation. Leverage expands capacity beyond savings alone. Meanwhile, the person reinvesting only into lifestyle experiences, inflation of cost. Bigger apartment, new car, higher fixed expenses. The income rises, the margin disappears. Margin is what creates ownership. Without margin, there is no acquisition. Without acquisition, there is no compounding. Without compounding, there is no catching up. And here is the quiet truth. The system does not stop you from owning. It simply makes participation easier than accumulation, easier to upgrade consumption than to delay it, easier to borrow than to build, easier to spend than to compound. Most people follow the path of least friction. Least friction rarely leads to leverage. Catching up requires intentional discomfort, delaying visible upgrades, redirecting surplus into invisible structures, accepting slower lifestyle growth for faster asset growth. That trade is unpopular, but it is structural. If you do not change incentives in your own life, you will continue optimizing for income inside a system that rewards ownership. And optimization inside the wrong objective only deepens the gap. The difference is not talent. It is alignment. Aligned incentives produce aligned outcomes. Misaligned incentives produce permanent lag. Most people are not behind because they are incapable. They are behind because they are optimizing for the wrong metric. Income feels measurable. Ownership feels abstract. But over time, abstraction becomes dominance, and dominance compounds quietly. Time is the final separator. Not talent, not intelligence, not even starting point. Time. In the beginning, the difference between linear income and compounding assets is barely visible. Two people earn similar salaries. Two people live in similar apartments. Two people appear equally stable. There is no obvious gap. But underneath the surface, their trajectories are already diverging. One directs surplus into ownership. The other directs surplus into upgrades. One accumulates invisible weight. The other accumulates visible comfort. The divergence is slow at first, almost unfairly slow. Compounding in early stages feels insignificant. Returns are small. Growth appears modest. Progress looks underwhelming. This is why most people stop. Because compounding rewards patience before it rewards magnitude. And patience does not produce applause. Linear income, by contrast, produces immediate feedback. Raise approved, bonus received, promotion announced, visible progress. Compounding produces quiet progress. Dividend reinvested, equity appreciated slightly, debt reduced incrementally. Invisible progress. Humans are biased toward visible signals. The system exploits that bias. Consumption is visible. Ownership is silent. So most people chase visible upgrades. New apartment, new car, new status marker. Each one raises fixed expenses. Each one reduces margin. And margin is the fuel of compounding. Without margin, there is no accumulation. Without accumulation, time works against you. Because time does not pause. Inflation compounds. Asset prices compound. Capital concentration compounds. If your assets are not compounding, your purchasing power is quietly shrinking relative to those who are. This is where catching up becomes nearly impossible, not in year 3, in year 15. After a decade of reinvested returns, the asset holder is no longer relying on contribution alone. Their base has grown. Returns are generated on previous returns. Momentum exists. Momentum changes everything. When returns exceed contributions, effort becomes optional. Not entirely, but partially. Partial detachment from labor is strategic freedom. Meanwhile, the linear earner must continue increasing output to maintain position. If income stagnates, lifestyle compresses. If employment pauses, stability erodes. There is no internal engine running beneath them, only effort. Effort is powerful, but effort does not scale indefinitely. Energy declines. Time remains fixed. Opportunities narrow with age. Compounding, however, accelerates with time. This is the asymmetry. Early years favor labor. Later years favor capital. If you spend early years optimizing only for income, you arrive later without a base. And building a base late requires exponentially more sacrifice. The tragedy is not low income. The tragedy is delayed ownership. Because ownership delayed means compounding delayed. And compounding delayed means distance widened. Distance widened over long enough periods feels like an unbridgeable gap. Not because you stopped moving, but because the curve steepened. Most people never catch up because they underestimate time's multiplier effect. They think in years. The system compounds in decades. They measure effort weekly. Capital measures growth continuously. This is not dramatic. It is structural. Small, consistent asset growth, reinvested over long periods, outpaces aggressive income growth that is consumed. That is not motivational advice. It is arithmetic. Time does not reward urgency. It rewards structure. If your structure compounds, time amplifies you. If your structure resets, time exposes you. And exposure over decades creates visible separation. Separation that looks like luck, like privilege, like unfair advantage. Often, it is simply compounding allowed to run uninterrupted. Catching up is not about sprinting. It is about building something that moves when you are still. Because if nothing moves when you stop, you are permanently tied to effort. And effort alone cannot outrun time. So the question is no longer, why am I behind? The better question is, what is actually compounding in my life? Because something is always compounding. If it isn't assets, it is expenses. If it isn't equity, it is dependency. If it isn't ownership, it is obligation. The system does not require you to fail. It only requires you to remain linear. Linear income, linear thinking, linear planning. Short-term optimization inside long-term curves. Most people stay focused on increasing speed. They rarely examine direction. Speed inside the wrong structure only deepens exposure. If you earn more but spend proportionally more, nothing changes. If you upgrade lifestyle as fast as income rises, margin disappears. And without margin, there is no redirection into ownership. The shift is not dramatic. It is structural. You do not need to abandon income. You need to convert portions of it into something that persists, something that accumulates, something that compounds without permission. Partial ownership is enough to begin divergence. A stake in productive assets, equity in businesses, cash flow that is not tied directly to your hours. It does not need to be extreme. It needs to be consistent. Consistency allows time to assist you instead of compete with you. When assets begin producing small returns, those returns become additional contributors. When contributors multiply, momentum builds. Momentum reduces pressure. Reduced pressure increases optionality. Optionality is the real escape. Not luxury, not visibility, not status. Optionality. The ability to choose. The ability to pause without collapse. The ability to negotiate from strength. Most people never catch up because they never shift their objective. They chase higher income instead of higher leverage. They optimize for comfort instead of compounding. They measure progress monthly instead of structurally. The system is not personal. It rewards what it is designed to reward. Capital that compounds, ownership that persists, structures that scale. If you remain entirely dependent on effort, your ceiling remains human. If part of your life compounds independently of you, your ceiling begins to lift. This is not about abandoning work. It is about redirecting surplus, even small surplus, relentlessly. Over time, the difference becomes undeniable. Not overnight, not in viral moments, but in quiet accumulation. Catching up is not about matching someone else's income. It is about changing your relationship with time. Because when time begins working with you instead of against you, the race changes. If this shifted how you see the system, subscribe. Like this if it clarified something. Movement is not escape. Structure is.